Hey everyone, Diogo here. I hope you are doing well. Alright, so by the time that this video goes out, it should be a couple of days into Arlecchino's second rerun banner. I am sure that some of you are contemplating whether going for her or not. I mean, why would you click on this video in the first place, to be honest? But anyways, let me start off by saying that Arlecchino is still a great character, both in terms of just like having a character in the game to enjoy, and also if you want to think about like the end game modes like Stygian Onslaught, Spiral Abyss. Like right now, she is probably arguably one of the best characters in the game to deal with the third boss in the Stygian Onslaught, which is the first time that she has been like shielded in the Stygian Onslaught, but it's a welcome surprise. Like, I'll be very honest, if you're thinking of going for her because you want the strongest like pyro character, or you just want the strongest character in the game, unfortunately, that title doesn't belong to her. As much as I love her, that title definitely belongs to Mavwika. And if you follow like Mavwika recently, you've seen that there's like new methods to like increase her damage and all of that. But for me personally, I still think of Arlecchino as the number one pyro character in terms of like the character as a whole. So like her drip, her aura, like her story as a character, a bit of everything combined, let's say. Will Arlecchino still be able to clear pretty much all the content in the game, even at C0? Yes, I'd say so. Like, maybe only excluding, like, dire difficulty of the Stygian Onslaught, and maybe, if unlucky, even Phyllis too, if there's, like, very specific characters that are shield. So if you're someone that wants a very strong character, I'd probably recommend going for Mavwika instead. But she'll still be able to do everything that you really ask of her, just maybe not the very, very, very top difficulty levels. This now leads me into how best to build your Arlecchino. So first off, for her artifacts, you pretty much have two different options. These being her best in slot, which is going to be Harmonic Whimsy, which is a set dedicated to her Bond of Life mechanic. And then you also have the Gladiator set. The Gladiator set is pretty good for the main reason that it's very resonant efficient. Because if you go and do like weekly bosses, you get the materials for Gladiator, and if you get lucky enough, you get good pieces that you can use on your Arlecchino. And rather than going to the domain where Whimsy is, or even doing like strongboxing, you're basically doing a 2-for-1, so you're getting your weekly boss drops, and you're also getting the Gladiator set. So for lower investment Arlecchinos, I'd probably say stick with Gladiator. The damage difference between Gladiator and Whimsy, with more or less the same stats, it's a very minimal, like 5 to maybe 10%. Like, the difference does get higher at higher investment. So if you do have a very good like Arlecchino, or if you've invested a lot into like the Whimsy artifact, the difference does get higher as you get like more invested in it. And this is for later on in the video as well, but once you start to get into like a C6 territory, the Whimsy is much better because the burst doesn't scale with Gladiator, and it does with Whimsy. So there's that as well. In terms of artifact stats, Arlecchino is pretty easy to build in terms of which stats she looks out for as a DPS. It'll be mainly crit stats as the main priority across all the different artifacts, with both attack percent and EM as very good substats as well. Just slightly behind crit, but still noticeable damage increases for her. For her Sands, you mainly want a attack percentage main stat, but EM can also be pretty viable. This is obviously dependent on the team that you have her on, but EM can also be used. And then with her wanting a Pyro Goblet all the time, with either a crit rate or a crit damage circlet. But then again, this is dependent on your stats on her and which one you need more to complete her build. Now for her talents and her talent priority. I made this a pretty quick section for those of you that just want to know the priority of her talents, and without much of a fuss really. So her normal attacks are by far the most important stat or the most important talent to level up, then followed by her skill, and her burst will be the last one to level up. Okay, now, so to go into a bit more detail about what each talent does, her normal attacks have a standard 6-hit strike rotation, and for now, this is what I'm going to say, as all of this line of text will be explained later on after her skill, because they're both like intertwined with one another. Her skill is named Ulizash, and after using it, it will mark enemies with a Bond of Life mechanic, which will be shown as a small X, and this is what is called a Blood Debt Directive. This Blood Debt Directive will take 5 seconds to turn into a blood debt do, which we're going to call it like the bigger X in this in this example, which is when you can absorb Arlecchino's Bond of Life mechanic and then start to do damage. So what you normally do within these 5 seconds that you need to wait is that you do your rotation for your team. So you switch to your support and like set up your rotation so that by the time that the 5 seconds are done is more or less when you're finished setting up with your other team members. So then when you go back into Arlecchino, you can do as much damage as possible with her. As a quick example of this, a team consisting of Arlecchino, Citlali, Kazaha, and Bennett, the rotation would be do the Arlecchino skill, then use Bennett's burst, Kaza E, then Citlali's E and burst, and then back onto Arlecchino, which should be after 5-ish seconds, to absorb her Bond of Life by holding her charge attack. Now, going back to her normal attack, this whole wall of text essentially means that whenever you absorb her Blood Debt do, after the 5 seconds, Arlecchino's normal attacks will do extra damage as she is in her Bond of Life state. To demonstrate this, at the start of her rotation, you would do like higher damage, and this is because from the bar below, which is her Bond of Life bar, as this is empty, this is when her damage is higher, and vice versa. So the other way, so when it's nearly full, she'll be doing less damage from this. And lastly, for her burst, so in other words, Bale Moon Rising, this burst doesn't really serve a purpose of damage. What it does is instead it does 2 different things. One of the reasons that you use her burst is to restart your rotation. So once you start becoming like less with Bond of Life on Arlecchino, so you start doing less damage, you can start restart a rotation, so then you can reset it and then do a lot of damage again. Another reason to use it is to heal up Arlecchino. So depending on the amount of Bond of Life that you have left is how she will be healed. So if you're basically like close to dying for one reason or the other, you can, and you still have like, let's say, half of the Bond of Life, so you can heal her up and she'll still heal up quite a bit, to be honest, which is a pretty good mechanic to have. Moving on to her weapons, I will list the main weapons that people will most likely have, as these will be the most common experiences that they will have, obviously. If you want to have a more comprehensive comparison between all the different options of the weapons, I'll suggest having a look at Zyx's guide that he still has in the channel, which is like a year ago at this point, in which he lists like all the different percentages of damage and how much like damage they actually do for all the different weapons. So this is probably the best thing to look at. The best free-to-play option is by far the White Tassel. This is a weapon that has a pretty low base attack comparatively to like the 4-star or 5-star options, but even as a 3-star option, it's very easily obtainable and you can get her pretty easily to like R5 as well. So it boosts normal attack damage by 48%, which is exactly what Arlecchino needs, and as such, it actually makes a like pretty much a better option than the majority of 4-star options, which is very, very good. Now, in my opinion, the best 4-star option is the Battle Pass weapon, which is the Deathmatch. This is because it gives Arle a crit rate boost, so you won't need to worry about it as much in your substats, and even for your circlet, you probably have to go for a crit damage circlet instead to like even out the stats. And it also gives her a boost depending on the number of enemies that you're fighting. So compared to the White Tassel, this is around like a 5 to 8% increase in damage, which is kind of noticeable. For her 5-star options, there are pretty much 2 main choices. As you can imagine, her signature weapon will be her best in slot, but also the Primordial Jade Wing Spear will be very comparative. This is a weapon that you can get in the standard banner, so there's a high chance that most of you already have this weapon if you've played the game long enough. In terms of damage boost compared to the Deathmatch for the Wing Spear, you see like another 7 to 10% increase, and then compared to the White Tassel, you see like a 15 to 20% damage increase depending on the teams that you use. Now let me talk about her signature weapon. When equipped by Arlecchino, it turns into a literal scythe, which I personally find like pretty cool. But also in terms of damage, it gives Arlecchino like another like 5 to 10% jump in damage from the Primordial Jade Wing Spear, which is pretty good. Like compared to the Deathmatch, the signature weapon gives like a 15 to 20% jump, which is pretty big. Then from the White Tassel, it's even more. This is in between like 25 to 35%, depending on the team that you use. I know that some of you might have the question of if which was like more worth to go for, whether it's more worth to go for her signature or to go for like C1 or C2 instead. I'll be answering these types of questions at the end of the video. There will be timestamps throughout the video to like help out, like find exactly where to search for this. Now for her teams. Luckily, Arlecchino is a very flexible unit that has many different team comps which are somewhat comparable. Like the main team that you're looking out for is a melt team, but then you also have a vape team, a mono pyro team, and a overload team as well, which all are very viable in different scenarios. So her best team is the melt team, obviously, with Solali as the core of the team. But you do also have the option of going for other cryo units such as like Diona or Charlotte if you really want to. They're not as good as Solali, obviously, but they're still pretty good. So essentially you will want Arlecchino, Solali, and Bennett, and then one of Shilonen, Kazuha, or even Sucrose as like a replacement for Kazuha. This is generally her best team in slot that you get the most damage out of her. But then you also have like her invade team, so you can have Arlecchino paired up with Yalan, which is probably the best Hydra option. But you also have the option of Xingqiu to replace Yalan, and then the exact same core of the team with Bennett, then one of either Shilonen, Kazuha, or Sucrose. You also got the Mono Pyro team, which again you have more or less the same team comp. You have Arlecchino, Shilonen, Bennett, then one of Kazuha or Sucrose. And finally, you will have a overload team, which will be the most different one of all four main teams. So you have Arlecchino as the base. You'll also have a Fischl, Chevreuse, and a Bennett. The Fischl can be replaced with Beidou, but the other two slots are pretty, like, you can't really swap them with any other characters. Chevreuse and Bennett, they're just very, very good for this team. The only really like the Electro character is the one that you can like swap about, but the other three are definite. As said before, the Melt team is the one that has the highest damage potential, but then the other three are very, very comparable. Like one of the things that I should note in is depending on how your Arlecchino is built. So if you have a bit more of like EM, like the Vape and the Melt team will perform better. If you have like better crit stats, the Mono Pyro and the Overload team will tend to perform better, but they're very like negligible, probably like a max 5% difference from one team to the other. Now, moving on to her Constellations, let me just say firstly that Arlecchino is still very competitive and strong, even at C0. But then again, if you are wanting to get her Constellations, her early ones are very, very good. Obviously, do be advised that you don't need any Constellations to actually clear like all the content of the game to get the necessary rewards. If you want to clear like dire difficulty, that's probably the only thing that you really need Constellations for. But anyways, for SC1, this is a very strong Constellation for the fact that it gives around like 20 to 25% damage boost from C0. On top of this, I'd say the best thing of the Constellation is the fact that she gets increased resistance to interruption. That means that when you're facing like enemies that do like big attacks, like the Topa, she doesn't get kicked around as much. So you can just continue to like tank the hits, let's say. And like this is not put into numbers, but that time that you'd be normally like trying to like dodge or something like that, you're able to continue hitting the enemies, which translates for more increased damage. For her C2, this again is a very, very good Constellation for her and a very good stopping point if you're going to go just for Constellations. It essentially lets you skip the waiting period of her skill. So now those 5 seconds that you'd normally wait, you don't need to wait anymore. As soon as you use her skill, you can straight away absorb the Bond of Life. This will mean now that your rotation will change a bit. So instead of like going to Arlecchino, then going to your supports during those 5 seconds to like start your rotation, you can like switch it around. So go to your supports first, do all of them first, and then go straight to Arlecchino and then do your damage like that. On top of this, whenever you absorb her Bond of Life, so her skill, you will now release like an explosion that scales off her attack, and this deals a 900% based on her attack. This is actually a big amount of damage, as you can imagine. And again, just in terms of pure damage, this leads to like 25% increased damage from her C1. This is just from like the explosion. This is not even taking into the account the time saved from like those 5 seconds that you don't need to like wait anymore, let's say. So for her C3, this is slightly different to how every other character works in the game really. So normally other characters in the game, you would get a +3 on her talent level for her skill and her burst. So for C3 and C5. But for Arlecchino, her C3 increases her normal attack damage, which is her main source of damage, obviously. So this is actually a useful constellation. Like in terms of just pure numbers, it gives like a 15% increase. But I still say that C1 and C2 are probably the best two like starting constellations for her. For her C4, this is probably the most useless constellation, I would say, out of all of them, outside of C5. So essentially, it will give Arlecchino some more energy whenever you absorb her Bond of Life. It decreases her burst time as well by 2 seconds, but this is quite literally like not really noticeable. Like for one, you're rarely going to be using her burst for like damage, so you're only really going to be using it for like to reset your rotation. But 2 seconds is barely noticeable. And then the energy that you get whenever you absorb her Bond of Life, Arlecchino, well, because her burst doesn't do much, the burst is not a big like factor into her kit, so you don't really want more energy. Just really quickly, for her C5, it literally just increases 3 talent levels on her burst. But if you're going to get her C5, you're most likely also going to get her C6, so it'll be useful then. But C5 just by itself, just not useful at all. So I'll just move on straight away to C6. This is actually a constellation that I really do enjoy, because it kind of like makes Arlecchino as a whole new character, really. So reason being is her burst now has a 700% multiplier compared to its normal rate. So now it actually does a lot of damage. And this burst, you can like melt it or vape it or even like overload it. So you can do like different reactions to it. So it multiplies very highly, and you can have like massive big scalings. Like I've managed to hit like 3 million with my Sitlali with on a melt. Things like that. On top of this, because that's just not enough clearly. After you use her Arlecchino skill, now both her normal attack and her burst will have increased crit rate by 10% and also increased crit damage by 70%. So for example, my specific build, I have 85 crit rate and 229 crit damage. That means that whenever I use her skill, I'll be at 95% crit rate and 299% crit damage, which is pretty outrageous. And due to the fact that this lasts 15 seconds, this pretty much has like 100% uptime of this effect. Like you need to make your rotation slightly longer, but you're most likely gonna like reset your rotation either way because your Arlecchino's damage is starting to like go down. So that 15 seconds is more than enough for that. As a C6 haver, I really do love this constellation because it makes her so strong to the point that she will beat anything in the open world with very like it'll be a breeze pretty much. And then things such as like the Spider Abyss are just not a challenge anymore, really, on like whatever side she's on. Like the only thing that she might not like be able to pass is maybe like Stygian Onslaught, but even then the C6 is so strong that even at a dire difficulty on Stygian Onslaught that's not meant to be for her character, if there's like any chance that she can still do damage to the enemy, she'll still be a very, very good option. Which then again for C6 it better be, but yeah. Alright, so we are getting towards the end of the video. There are a couple of questions that I'd like to answer as they are common within the community on someone that's going to go for like constellations for Arlecchino. So first off, which one to go for? Her C1 or her signature? For me personally, I would go for her signature, with the only exception being that if you already have the Jade Wing Spear. In that case, I would go for the C1 instead, because C1 with Jade Wing Spear is still very good. Now, if you want to go for either her C2 or C1R1, I'd be more inclined to say to go for her C2, because it's actually very useful. And then again, if you have other weapons, such as like the Deathmatch, again, the Jade Wing Spear, or even the White Tassel, when paired with the C2, it's very, very good. I'd say that the best stopping point for her is at C2 or R1, like it is for most characters, to be honest. But you'll get 2 very good constellations, which will, just from those 2 constellations, you'll probably get like 40 to 50% extra damage. Then you will also get her signature weapon, which again is another like 20-ish%, so probably like 60% from the original start point. And also you're going to get a drip from the scythe, which looks very cool in my opinion. And for the last question, should you go all the way towards her C6? For me personally, I only really go for a C6 of a character if I really like the character as a whole. So this is their design, their lore, like the story, and again, the design, because Arlecchino's design is by far the best in my opinion. So if you really like a character and you actually want to increase their damage and use them for like a very long time into the future, then I would say yes, it's worth going for her C6. In terms of just pure damage, it completely transforms her as a character. So there is that. I feel like you have a lot more fun with her C6 compared to the C0, obviously. But is it really worth it going all the way there just for the damage aspect? I would say no. Okay, so that is going to be all for this video. Hopefully this video helped make like a more informed decision on whether to go for Arlecchino or not, and whether if you're going to go for Constellations, it will help out in that decision as well. As you can imagine and guess, she is my favorite character in the game, and I thought I'd try to make this type of video, which is the first for me, like in this channel, just to like try and inform more people, because obviously I've been playing with her for a very long time, so I might have a bit more knowledge that I can share on and like help people out. But anyways, do leave a comment below if you found this useful, and let me know if there's any suggestions on how I can improve these type of videos. That'd be greatly appreciated, because I'll have a look at it and improve into the future. But yeah, I'll be signing off for now. I do truly hope that you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. Until next time.
To 11 when the world ended. At least it felt like it at the time. Teenage years make a heartbreak worse. Plus a lot was going on, couldn't stop it at the time. Dad tried to flip the house.